So since this week was Rosh Chodesh Elul, we got to do something to sort of get ourselves into that mindset. And the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, as he's describing Rosh Chodesh Elul, he gives us some of the remuzim that we have towards Elul. Some of them we're probably more familiar with than others, but let's just take a look at what he says. So he says, "Me Rosh Chodesh Elul ad achar Yom Kippurim hema yemei ratzon." These are the days that we have a certain ability to connect with Hashem, that to be able to do tshuva, that sort of thing. Ki b'chol hashana hakadosh baruch hu mekabel tshuva min hashavim elav b'lev shalem mekom mekom yamim elam muvchorim yoser muzamanim l'tshuva. He says, certainly any day of the year, Hashem accepts our tshuva, but there are certain days, and this is Elul's one, is those days that are really sort of special in terms of our ability to connect and to do tshuva. The Osam Yimei Rachamim V'Yimei Ratzon Kibrosh Chodesh Elu Ala Moshe Al Har Sinai Lekabel Luchos Shnim. So why is it that Elul is so special? Because Rosh Chodesh Elu is when Moshe Rabbeinu went back up Har Sinai to get the second set of luchos. And he was there for 40 days, as we know. And then he came down right in the 10th of Tishrei. That was the complete of, we achieved complete kapara by that day. That's right. That's Yom Kippurim. Umin az hukdeshu yomim elu lemei ratzon v'yom asir b'tishrei liyom Kippurim. And that's why for generations after, since then, that's why Yom Kippur has been what Yom Kippur is all about. Uminag berov hamekomos lisanos be'erev Rosh Chodesh Elul la'asos seder Yom Kippur katan kadei she'achinu libam tshuva. So there's many of the custom to fast before Rosh Chodesh Elul. B'imchal Rosh Chodesh b'Shabbos ma'dinu l'yom ha'chamishi lefanav. Rav Adonai Rabbi Yitzchak Lurav Zichron Livracha. So the Ari said, "V'asher lo tzoda ve'elokim ina liyado v'sam v'lecha." So now he's sort of shifting gears without telling us he was shifting gears, and he's going to give us some of these remuzim to Elul so that we can understand what Elul was truly about. So he says the Arizal liked to quote the pasuk from the Ari Miklat that said, "V'asher lo tzoda." That, right, this is describing that the person who committed murder, but it was b'shogeg, right? He didn't mean to do it. So he wasn't trying to ensnare or trap this person, or he wasn't coming up to kill him. This is just what happened. And we know that we set aside these Ari Miklat for these in this situation, so that you can flee there from the Gol Adam. So if you look at the letters of Ina liyado v'samti lecha, Rashi Tevos Elul. So Lomar ki chodesh zeh hu eis ratzon lekabat tshuva al chatem she'asa bechol hashana. And the Arizal said, this is why is this? What's the connection here? He says because the days of Elul are, again, they are a special time to accept that Hashem accepts our tshuva on any of the chatoim that we do during the year. And so this pasuk specifically tells us that even on those things that we're shogeg on, that we have to do tshuva. And this is a reminder, it's a wake-up call that during Elul, we should think about even the things that we weren't doing with any kind of malice, but but still they happened, so we did them. We still need to do tshuva. So Od Amru Dor
right? You still killed somebody.
Exactly. Exactly. Now, hopefully, we didn't do that, but the remez is still there that those things that we did b'shogeg, right? They have an effect, and there are those in it. But I think you're pointing out something interesting, which is that I've heard it pointed out also that why use this example of the murderer, right? Because we're not, the things that we do typically, right, where most of us are not falling to that. I mean, that's a really serious.
That's situation. The worst you can do.
I mean, that's as final as it gets, right? I mean, you've taken away the person's life, and it doesn't matter that you didn't mean to do it or that you were whatever. but it's fine. There's a certain finality to it. And the Bali Musar like to point out that we also have to be careful, because sometimes it's words that we say that can really be hurtful, or things that, that we actions that we take in front of other people that can really be hurtful, that also cause tremendous amount of damage. And we have to, sort of understand that can be the impact of what we're doing, even again, if it's b'shogeg. But then the Kitzur moves on and says, Od amro dorshe rishumos, uma Hashem alokecha es levavcha ves levav zarecha. So here's another one of these ramazim, where it says that Hashem does some kind of a mila on our hearts, in the hearts of your children, like your descendants as well. Rashi tevos Elul, right? Es levavcha ves levav. So that's also Rashi tevos Elul. And then the last one, the one we're most familiar with probably, is V'chein ani ledodi v'dodi li, Rashi tevos Elul. V'chein ish l'reyehu, but sorry, one more. There's a fourth one. V'chein ish l'reyehu u'antarus le'avyonim. Right. That's also an often quoted one from the Megillah Esther. Rashi tevos Elul again. When we look at ish l'reyehu u'antarus le'avyonim, Remez l'shlosha dvarim. So the Kitzur says if we put it all together, we have three different things that this is a remez too. He says tshuva, tefilah, and tzedakah. Shetzrich and these daris behem b'chodesh zeh, because Elul is really about, like what we say in the Unesana Tokef, that tefilah, tzedakah, tshuva are what are able to destroy that the gzar against us. And he says umal Hashem v'gomer. So when it says umal Hashem as levav zarecha, that's ramez l'tshuva. That's tshuva, that Hashem is sort of giving us a heart that we're able to realize what we've done and that we have to do tshuva. Ani ledodi is ramez l'tefillah, the closeness that we have to a Kadosh Baruch Hu is about that. Shehi rinas dodim. That's the song of lovers, and that should be our relationship with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. Ish the Reyehu Matanos Levyonim Romes Litzdaka. Clearly, Matanos Levyonim is tzedakah. That's so there we have the remazim for each of those three components that are required to do tshuva, and in those psukim that we hear people quoting. So that's the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch. A little, I guess, a quick intro to Elul and what we should be thinking about. So. We have some time. I wanted to just shift gears back to Rav Pinkus. So he has it's sort of we went through his first introduction, where he was sort of giving us some ideas as to what we should think about when we as we involve ourselves in Tefilah. And this seemed to be apropos to sort of come back to this, as knowing that in a month we're going to spend a lot of time in Shul with Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. And he has a second introduction, it's a little bit shorter, where he talks about hachana, being prepared, coming into davening with a bit more preparation. So let's just get into it and see where he takes us. But I think he has some really interesting insights that can be helpful. So he says, Yesod hakavana zechus halei b'tfilah tluyim b'hachana shelefaneha. He says that if we really want to have kavana, we really want to get more out of our tefillah, then it's all about being prepared beforehand. V'chein kazav Rambam v'zelashono ketzad hi hakavana. How is it? How do we make this? How do we do this thing called kavana? So it says sheifana es libo mikol machshavos. You have to empty your heart of all the different things that we're thinking about. V'yir atzmo ki ilu hu omid lifnei hashchina. And we have to envision ourselves that we're standing in front of Hashem Himself. L'fichach tzorich leishiv ma'at kodem atfila. So we have to come to shul, sit down, give ourselves a moment to sort of collect ourselves, in order to sort of get ourselves together, to have that kavana. This is V'kein Kosov b'Shulchan Aruch and Siman Tzadik Gimel v'zeh leshona yisha sho'achas kodem sheyikum l'tefila lehispalo k'dei she'kavin libo l'makom. Also, that you have to wait there for a period of time. It says literally an hour, but we see the Magen Avram and others say it really just means a small period of time, although we know that the Hasidim or Rishonim that are mentioned in the Gemara Brachos say they actually spent a whole hour. So, it could be that it's really more dependent on where you are and what you need, what you're trying to achieve. But certainly giving yourself those extra moments of just sort of getting your head straight is what we're talking about. says Vihine Seder Zeh the Yisham At Kodem Hatfila Eno Divrei Musar V'Zaros. We're not. This isn't Musar. This isn't Yisar. This isn't to wake us up. Or Mili de Chasidusa. This isn't that words of Chasidus, meaning not Chasidus like what we think of Chasidim, but meaning that as the Gemara Brachos said, the Chasidim Rishonim were the ones who would, daven nates. They would get up an hour before davening to prepare themselves. That's the Chasidus that he's referring to. He says, no, it's not any of that. Allah halacha. This is just Pashat halacha. Shahari hevia harambam b'lashon kitzad hiya kavana. The Rambam is using the language of kitzad hiya hakavana, meaning from a halachic standpoint. The kavana atzma hi mina dvarim hame'akvim matfilah. We know that kavana or lack thereof is what prevents us from having a real tefillah. V'nimsa hame'acher lebeisa knesses b'shachris v'chotif etzatalas tefillin v'mispala b'ritza v'chipazon. We've all experienced this before, where we get to shul late in the morning, we're rushing to get our talis and tefillin on, and just so we can try and sort of get caught up with where the tzibur is. Abed mincha, mamarev, mamahir litfos as a tzibur b'shmona esrei, or we're rushing. You come to mincha mamarev and they're already just about at shmona esrei, and you try to quickly catch up so that you can at least enter shmona esrei with the tzibur. How is it neged halacha? That is against halacha. Kvar merosh muftach lo shelo yatzliach lekaven. And you have to realize that when that's your situation, you're really not going to be successful in having kavana. Tefilah sotehei shelo kahogen, and your tefilah just won't be all that great. Umisbar she'i efshar la'amod v'tekaf lihispala mitoch ha'inyan she'osek bo. And if you think about it, the biggest problem is that it's impossible to simply walk in, stand, and instantly be ready to daven because of everything that's you've been involved with up until that moment. You can't just rely on the fact that somehow you're going to magically clear your mind and sort of be able to enter tefillah with the right mindset. And if you're doing that, you are not listening to what the Chachamim are telling you. And even if you are able to achieve some level of kavana, it won't last. The Chachamim said the only way to achieve it is to arrive early, get yourself situated, and sort of, you're waiting, you're contemplating, you're getting yourself ready. That's an individual thing, knowing what you need and how much time you need. Chasidim Arishonim machmas utzemes tahar tfilasam hayu zakukim l'shah shlema. The early Chasidim, like we said, they needed a whole hour. V'anu kol echad v'echad kfiyarcha, but all of us, it's just going to be dependent on us as individuals. Below hachana filoim yisakish v'draban liba lekavin ula yamshich hakavana lechetzi bracha kula. Says, but to us, if we simply just walk in and just sort of jump right into Shemona Esrei, we'll be able to have kavanah for maybe half a bracha or for one bracha, but then it sort of leaves you, right? And again, I think we've all experienced this where, I'm focused and then all of a sudden my mind is like 1,000 miles away and I have to try and reel myself back in. Right? He uses the language that we're familiar with in like Bava Kama, Bava Metzia, that what happens is that Cheskas Marikama, the first person who had the chazaka on the object, meaning what my brain was originally thinking about, is where my brain goes back to, after 2 moments, because I haven't really prepared myself. There's עוד halachos, לא יעמוד להספלל מתוך צחוק, קלס ראש, ולא מתוך מריבה, ולא מתוך כעס, אלא מתוך דברי תורה ושמחה של מצווה. So he now sort of going on to a different point, which is, what should we be thinking about? How should we be approaching davening? And he's quoting the Gemara and Brachos again, that we have to, when we're davening, we shouldn't be standing to daven out of, sort of laughter and levity, or even, being, sort of angry and argumentative. But we should be entering it by using divrei Torah, and simcha shel mitzvah, right? We should have the simcha of feeling like, wow, what an opportunity that we have to daven. Ayin shem b'shulchan aruch shekol elu ha'inyanim kovshim es halev matridim es hamachshava. And again, I think we all realize this, we all experience is that you come into shul, you sort of rush to shul because you ran from a meeting or something else, and that's what's on your mind, or you just had an argument with somebody or whatever. That's what's on your mind, and that's sort of what's pulling at you. V'halev panui l'tefila hu davka ha'azog b'simcha shel mitzvah b'divrei Torah. And he says the heart that is really ready for davening, that's sort of been cleared out of everything else, is the one that was already, either operating in this idea of simcha shel mitzvah and from divrei Torah. And that's how you can be more successful in your davening. But he says, but we can even take this a little bit deeper to understand how hachana it really is or lack of hachana is what prevents us from having good tefillah. This is more so than just it goes beyond just being able to sort of clear your mind for tefillah. It says the Gemara in Brachos, Daf Lamed Aleph, and Rabbanan in Omdin Nispala, lo mitoch atzvus, lo mitoch atzlus, lo mitoch schok, similar to what we just saw, v'lo mitoch kalus rosh, v'lo mitoch v'forim betelim, v'lo mitoch simcha shel mitzvah, meforish Rashi. But then he quotes the Rashi on this Gemara, and he says, Rashi says, what is simcha shel mitzvah? So he says, simcha shel mitzvah, kagon divrei tanchumim, shel Torah, kagon samach legeulas, Mitzrayim or Somech Tefilah David Shehusha Shevach Tanchumim v'chulei Ayin Sham. He says, look at Rashi, but Rashi is telling us what are examples. The examples of Simcha Shel Mitzvah would be that would be the Geulas Mitzrayim, or saying Ashrei Masha Kasav Samech LaGeulas Mitzrayim Lechorazu Halacha Shel Smichas Geula Tefilah. And Rav Pinkas, is pointing out that what is Rashi trying to tell us here? What he's trying to say, what he seems to be saying, is that we have this halacha that we enter into Shemona Esrei and we are somech geula letfila, right? That's the halacha, that we're supposed to be somech, that as soon as we say Gaal Yisrael, and we're talking about the geula from Mitzrayim, that's when we start tefillah. We'll be in smichas geula letfila mefarish Rashi bebrachos. B'shem Yerushalmi v'zal l'shano umi she'enu somech gula l'tefila l'mahu doma. What if you are somech gula l'tefila? What is it similar to? This is the Gemara Yerushalmi that Rashi is quoting there. L'yohav Hashem melech, that the person who loves the melech shabo v'dofek al pischo, he goes and knocks on the door of the melech. Yatza melech umatzor shehiflig afu hiflig. The person knocks on the door, and no, he doesn't hear an answer. He runs away. The king comes to see who is there. No one's there, so he runs away. So nothing happens. Rather, how do we connect with Hashem? The way that we do it is by reciting these praises of Yetzias Mitzrayim. That brings us closer to Hashem. And once you've established that closeness to Hashem, now you can start asking for the things that you need. You can really daven for what you're davening for a refuah, or for a parnasa, or for whatever else, whatever tzaros you have at that moment. So if you think about this, what's really going on is what Rashi is telling us is we have to establish a closeness to Hashem that we can use when we're trying to connect with Tefilah. So when you are preparing, or when he is preparing himself beforehand, you are really, what he's doing is he's establishing a closeness to Hashem. This is when you walk into davening and you haven't done this hachana, what you're sort of doing is yelling from afar, and you're hoping that Hashem hears you, but you haven't gotten close. וכמו שאין אפשרות לדבר עם המלך לפני שייכנס לפרטר ויעמוד לפניו. You can't start talking to the king before you actually get into the throne room. You can't start when you're walking down the hallway or just in the vestibule. You're too far away, he can't hear you. And so too, somebody who davens without doing the hachana, it's sort of like you're yelling at the king from afar. When you're talking to somebody close by, it's easy to have that conversation, and the conversation can just continue to flow. But if you're trying to have a conversation with somebody who's across the room and there's a lot of people in between you, and there's too many things that are sort of, in between, the line between you and your friend, he'll only hear bits and pieces. So he says that this is, how do we do this without having that established, that sort of closeness that we need to have in order to have that conversation, to have that relationship with Hashem.
Jeff,
yeah.
You think that Birkas Torah falls on this category of getting close to Hashem, of preparation?
I missed the first part of the question.
Birkas Torah.
Oh, is Birkas Torah right? So that's a good question. So we saw last week from the Meshech Chochmah that Birkas Torah seems to be, at least according to the Meshech Chochmah, seems to be more about putting us in the right frame of mind of what Torah is all about. That Torah study shouldn't just be for us because it's an intellectual pursuit, or because it's, maybe we're going to glean wisdom and use that for other purposes. Like we become wiser, that's helpful for us as people, and we get covered for it. People look up to us. So that was the Meshech Chochmah's approach to Birkas Torah. But I think, at the same time, I think you're right in that it does. I mean, that's really the idea there, right? It's sort of trying to focus us. Why are we studying Torah? What are we doing? What are we trying to accomplish, right? And it really is about connecting to Hashem, connecting to what's ruchnius around us. So, and I think what we'll see, I'm trying to remember if I think Rav Pinkus brings it up in this piece on Hachana, but what we'll see is that Tefilah in the Gemara, the word Tefilah means Shmona Esrei, but we use the word Tefilah more generically, right? So what we're saying is that you have to do this Hachana in order to really have a connection in Tefilah. But really what Tefilah is, it's not just one moment, it's not just one thing. Tefilah, especially when you think about Shacharis, is a lot of pieces, right? There's first the brachos that we say in the morning, then we go to Pesukei de Zimra, then we have the birchos of Kriya Shema, then we have more brachos, and then we go into Shmona Esrei. And each piece seems to be a hachana for the next, it's like, it's a whole process that we're going through. So I think in that respect also, I think what you're saying is true, and that that becomes the hachana for the next stages in Tefilah as we get into Pesukei de Zimra and the Birchas Kriya Shema, etc. Each one does seem to, and I think he points it out later, that each piece builds on the last piece. So he gets, I don't know that we'll have time to finish this, but what he really gets into is this idea that we have to realize that when we connect to Hashem, it really is it's a two-way street, and we can't just sort of show up and start talking. We have to establish that, and we have to establish in a way that Hashem wants to get close to us as well. It really is a relationship. You can't just develop a relationship like a friend, like a friendship can't be developed only one directional. It has to be that both sides are interested in it, and that's how we have to think about our Tefilah. Is that the hachana is really how we're establishing this two-way relationship with Hashem. That we're saying to Hashem, we want to connect to you. We need help. Maybe we'll look at this piece again. but I'll just say it a little bit outside, is that that's really what he's saying, is that it's really hard, right? We all know it. Sometimes we can be focused and think about some of the brachos, and then we lose, our mind wanders, and then we collect it back in and we get back. But it's really hard for us. And in some ways, it's sort of almost supernatural to be able to be focused all the way through. And that's what he says that we have to do, is we're establishing this relationship and saying to Hashem, we need your help. We can't do this, or our minds are, we just can't keep the focus for a period of time. You think about, especially like Shabbos and Yontif, where, we're in shul for a couple of hours, Rosh Hashanah 4 hours, right? Yom Kippur all day. Like, it's really hard for us. We have to daven and establish that relationship and say, Hashem, we want your help in doing this. We want the relationship, but we need your help in establishing that relationship. And that's really what he's talking about here. So maybe in future weeks, we'll try to see it more inside. But that's he has a couple of sources where he brings this from, but it's I think a really beautiful insight. Just to let you know, Ori, we'll be out of town next week, so we won't meet next week. But I was thinking is maybe a couple weeks after, we'll try to do maybe a little bit around davening for Rosh Hashanah and Kippur, to look a little bit into the davening for those, just to get prepared for, why do we say what, right? Because the Shemona Esrei is so different on Rosh Hashanah and Kippur than the rest of the year. What is it all about? Maybe we'll try to get into those.
Jeff, when did Reb Pinchas live and where?
He's American. He was. Then he moved to Israel, and he only died maybe, I want to say, in the last decade. I mean, very contemporary. Yeah, he died in a car accident in Israel.
So he wasn't talking about getting on a horse and takes a half an hour to get to shul, and then you need to decompress and get ready. He's
right.
Modern. Okay.
Right. It's very modern. And what's interesting, he was a Rosh Yeshiva. So a lot of what he's talking about is to the boys, to the yeshiva boys, saying, you got to wrangle yourself in. I'm trying to remember if we saw this ourselves, but he says this. He says, the yeshiva boys come in, and, you can tell the first year yeshiva boy. But the problem is, he said that, by the time they've been in yeshiva for a few years, you can tell in their lumdus that they've really grown. But he says you watch them davening, and it's like they haven't changed. Like that piece of it hasn't grown. And that's really what he's talking to the yeshiva boys about, is you can't just focus on the Gemara. You got to focus on davening as well. So yeah, a lot of it is really focused on the kids. But clearly, it's a universal idea or universal subject. So